song. And he said, I know that that's an old song. When I call Heather, I go, can you do the Sunshine song? So she's going, oh, not the Sunshine song. But Heather wrote that song. So isn't that amazing? How many of you guys can relate to things going on in childhood that if that wouldn't have happened, you wouldn't be the person you are today? Yeah, of course, right? Our bad stuff is what follows us around, but overcoming that makes us who we are, okay? And so tonight I want to talk about all the attacks that come at us as children and how we, here at Broken Chains, we have spent every day, every waking moment trying to help people be set free from the stuff they brought from their childhood, pretty much. But I want to talk to you about how do we keep our kids out of that danger to begin with, okay? Which, not that you can completely, but we don't have to add to it, do we? No. Right? The Hippocratic Oath is what doctors have to pledge when they become a doctor that says, first, do no harm. If I can't make you better, I at least promise to try not to make you worse. Right? And that's the stance I take raising my kids. I used to think I could save the world and fix people. And then I realized I'm just happy if I don't make you worse. Right? You know, being a parent is a very humbling experience, isn't it? If you've been a parent. Well, being a grandmother has been an even more humbling experience because not only do I have to watch my kids make mistakes, I have to watch my kids with their kids going, I wouldn't do it that way. And they're like, exactly, because look how screwed up I am, right? Because you had a chance with me, now let me try to fix it, right? But, you know, my mom is still alive, and she's my inspiration of how to be a mom. My grandparents have been gone since childhood, so I've never had really a grandma. But, you know, to look up to my mom and then look down at my kids and my grandkids, it's an interesting thing. And I come up from a very functional family, so to speak, and yet I still have my own problems. Right? So, before we even get rolling, let me just ask you an honest question. How many of you in this room can honestly say you survived childhood without abuse, molestation, abandonment, severe bullying, or an addiction? How many of you can escape childhood pretty darn healthy? Nobody. Oh, a couple people. Well, what happened to you afterwards, Chad? So in other words, very few of us have escaped a childhood that we would describe as a little bit traumatic, right? And that's in the normal world. That's just what's normal. And some of you have come through some really, really crappy stuff, right? But do we have to keep repeating this for our kids? No. Do we have to let society keep going and say that's okay? No, of course not. But we do, right? So I'm going to give you some examples today. I really don't want your daggers. You can dagger me later and then yell at me and call me and message me and all that stuff. But I just want you to, if you wouldn't mind, just hear what I have to say, what I want to show you in the Word, and then you can chew on it. Because I can tell you, you know, do not steal, it says it in the Bible, but you're going to make up your own mind if you're going to steal, right? I can't make you do anything or keep you from doing anything. But I would not be doing my job if I didn't present to you some of this, okay? All right, so since my daughter and my grandkids live in my home, it's very easy to disagree on child raising, right? But would we all agree that a child chewing on a wire that's plugged in is not a good idea? Yes. Okay, my daughter and I agree on that one. Okay, we're good on that one. So safety first, don't we say? Right, safety first. So that's not a good idea. Okay. What about a child climbing into a swimming pool on their own? No. Not a good idea, right? I worked with a child who drowned, was revived, and I think he's about 12, and he is still a vegetable. He's just a really big vegetable. He's in a wheelchair. He doesn't talk. He doesn't communicate, and it's just the most sad thing to ever see. So that's not a good idea to have kids around water. Okay, even if you're a terrible parent, would we all agree on that one? There's some things we agree on. Good. Okay, now there's some things we learn over time. Like if your child has a very large, heavy dresser in their room, they will learn how to use the drawers for steps. And I don't know how many, I didn't pull the stats, but children die every year pulling the dresser over top of them. So now we know you have to screw that sucker into the wall. Okay? Or anything heavy like that, like a TV cart or anything, you have to screw that into the wall if the child is going to be unattended, like in their bedroom or something. Okay? We all agree. Right? Okay. bicycle helmets, because I don't make my kids wear them. I know that's awful, but that's just me. I grew up without one, and I turned out okay, right? Imagine that they're more likely to die on the swing set at the park. Swing sets are an evil invention.
No, they're not. They're fun.
They break your neck.
Especially jumping off of them.
Yeah. Trampolines and balloons. You'll never see those in my house because they scare me. But you can ride your bike and shoot a gun. I don't care. But just don't shoot a balloon or swing on a swing or jump on a trampoline because I really do start to feel my heartbeat. All right. Now, no matter what you do, if you wrap them in bubble wrap or take pillows on their butt, like Eric's mother did when he tried to roller skate, stuff is going to happen to kids, isn't it? We can't keep everything from happening to us as kids, right? All right. And we know about the stuff in the world that happens, the things that I mentioned before, right? And now we're more aware of things, but it's never stopped. I mean, there is such an awareness in our country now about sex trafficking with kids. That's a horrible thought, but that's been going on in the other parts of the world forever. And just slavery. Kids that are working out in, what was it, like the cocoa fields and all that stuff. Kids are working as slaves. It happens to our kids. And we wake up, we make our coffee, we drive to work, or we do whatever, and we're comfortable in our world. And all this is going on in the world. And you're like, Deanna, why don't you do that? Because so many times in history we look back, and in the Bible we look back at atrocities that happen to children. Why? Because God's people did nothing. Are we willing to keep going on that path? You know why? Because the reason our children are attacked is because then they can't rise up and actually change the world. They can't rise up against evil and glorify God if the devil has destroyed you by age 3 and made you dysfunctional, right? Well, we've got to take this country back and take this world back and reclaim it for God. So we can't protect our kids from everything, but we can't also put our head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist, okay? All right, I want to give you a couple examples in the Bible. Some things that we know about, some things maybe you've never read about. But let's go back to the most popular of all babies, Jesus. Baby Jesus in the manger, right? All right. In Matthew 2, we read about what happened with Jesus. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi, which were who? The wise men, right? We 3 kings of the Lord. Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where's the one who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them at the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so I can worship him. Liar, liar, pants on fire. He wanted to kill him because there was this new king being born, King of the Jews. And he's like, oh no, I'm the king. He was worried about this so-called, Savior, Redeemer king that was going to rise up because he was thinking of earthly king. So this little baby, a little baby, is a threat to this big king. So he wants to have him destroyed. So on coming to the house, the 3 wise men saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts. Well, remember the gifts? Myrrh, frankincense, and gold, right? And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. That's why they're called wise men. Okay. All right, now, so King Herod was an evil, evil person. And since he was tricked, and the wise men did the right thing and turned around and did report where Jesus was, what happened? Verse 16, when Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. He gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. So just to make sure he gets to Jesus, let's just kill all the baby boys. Okay, not only is it hard for me to understand that kind of evil mind, because we have babies around here. Can you imagine just ordering their death? What about the soldiers that actually did it? What doesn't click in your mind? It goes, no, I'm not going to do this. Now, I I know they'd be killed and all that stuff, but what goes on in somebody's mind when they say, just go kill all the baby boys, and hopefully we'll find that Jesus baby? Really? And you're thinking, well, thank goodness nothing like this happens now. I'm glad we're not that crazy of a civilization anymore, right? If only that were true. All right. But Herod was trying to control the balance of power, wasn't he? So how do we stop this? How do we stop the attack on our children? How do we stop accepting evil? If we can see that it's evil, how do we stop it? Because this stuff is still going on. Okay, so let's look at a different story. Hundreds of years before Jesus was born, there was another evil king on the scene. In Exodus. Remember the story of Joseph and his brothers in the coat with all the colors, and if you saw the musical, okay? And so he had become real favorable, and his family moved back home, even though they tried to kill him. And okay, so we're in that town, okay? So then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to his people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous. If war breaks out, they'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. Oh my. You know, so since Joseph brought his buddies, they were hanging out there, all of a sudden God's blessing, and like, wow, these guys are getting stronger than us, right? And so the story goes on. Pharaoh actually told all the midwives who were helping the Hebrew women have babies, telling them to kill the babies if they have a boy. Well, they wouldn't do that. So they kind of lied and said, oh, we don't even help them have babies. They're so strong they have babies all by themselves, so we never get there. So good for them, though. Sometimes it's good to defy authority, right? So Pharaoh gave the order, all right, well, every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. Again, let's just kill them. What in the world does this have to do with anything? How many of you feel like there's been a target on your head since you were born? Okay, can you relate to what I'm saying? There is a target on our innocent children from the time they're born, from the time they're conceived, before they're born, to even exist. Because, you know, we may have in the midst of us a child that's going to rise up and do amazing things. And of course the devil wants to never see them rise up, right? Okay. The fear of the Egyptian king at this time was for the baby boys to grow up and create a big army. The girls were no threat, okay? So they were killing boys at this time, which is actually different than what goes on now. Now it's all the baby girls that get killed. But, and you guys are, most of you know that, right? In China, if you have a baby girl and you haven't had a baby yet, you're only allowed to have one. And so girls aren't very favorable, so they'll just kill the baby girl, okay? So, and that's the truth, I'm sorry to tell you. All right, so there's the story of Moses. So the king says, kill all the baby boys, right? We're in Egypt. There was a mother who said, not going to go there. She takes her son, puts him in a basket, sends him up the Nile, right? That was Moses. And Pharaoh's daughter finds him, and it actually raises him. So the very man who said, go kill everybody, there was one of these little Hebrew boys being raised right in his home. Guess what? This little Hebrew boy grows up, he gets called by God to leave the castle and then come back and kick his butt. That's what he did. He kicked his grandpa's butt, okay? And so he did free those people. All right, so that was the story of Moses. So you guys all know that story, right? Let my people go, that one, cross the Red Sea. Okay. All right. Now, here's the crazy thing. So Moses is leading the Israelites, right? They're just about to get to the promised land, which is the land that God said, I'm going to give you a new place. Because they were slaves. They were prisoners. And God said, no, you're going to live free. And I'm about to take you there. But he said, I got to warn you about a few things first. Okay, before I send you there, I got to tell you a few things. Now, there's some things that God shouldn't have to tell you not to do. Okay, and if you want to read some of those, read Leviticus. I'm thinking, really? You had to say that? Like, God really had to tell people, don't do this? Like, isn't that obvious? But evidently not. And one of the obvious things he tells them, these are God's people who he fed with bread from heaven. He split the Red Sea. He performed miracle after miracle. And he had to actually tell them these things. Listen to what he had to tell them. profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Verse 20, he says, the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Moloch is to be put to death. The members of the community are to stone him. I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Moloch, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. Really? You got to tell the people of God, hey, don't send your kids to a human sacrifice. Don't do that. Okay, just in case you needed to know that, don't do that. It makes God very angry. Okay, don't do that. Okay, now, then you can't say he wasn't warned. In verse 6, he says, I will set my face against anyone who turns to mediums and spiritists to prostitute themselves by following them, and I will cut them off from their people. These are pretty straightforward things, aren't they? Like, don't do this. It makes me angry because I'm your God, and you're worshiping other things. And when they sacrificed their kids to Moloch was a god, that was a pagan, satanic, demonic act, right? Okay, either God's your God or he's not your God. Which way do you want it, right? All right. So, he told them these things. Now, Moses himself didn't take the people into their new land. Okay, Joshua did. Moses died. Okay, Joshua took them in. Every time they had to go to another part of the land they were to take over and live in, there were people living there already. Okay? All right, I'm going to give you an example. You guys are the Canaanites. You're doing bad things. You don't worship God. Okay? But you live on some really nice land. It's flowing with milk and honey. It's really, really awesome, and God has chosen this land for his people. These are God's people. Guess what? They're about to come in and take your land. Because even though you're living here, this isn't really your place. This is for God's people. So, God's people, I'm going to send you to your promised land. Don't burn your children, okay? And don't practice witchcraft. And then there's a whole lot of other things I'm going to tell you in Leviticus, but if you didn't know that was wrong, you got bigger problems than I thought, okay? All right, so, but when you go over here, you need to wipe out everything. Let nothing remain. Everything. You know why? Because everything in here is evil. I don't even want you touching one leftover evil thing. You know why? Because it can make you evil. And you are a holy people. You are special and set apart. So please, when you go in, wipe it out. Guess what happened? Do you think they could listen to the God of miracles, to the God of deliverance and salvation? They started making up their own rules as the armies started to go out and conquer lands. Oh, yeah, but I like you. Well, you know what? You could be a worker on my farm, so I'll let you live. Guess what happened? By not following God's law, by God's direction, and the Israelites moved into this place, even though they knew God, they had just received the 10 Commandments. There was miracles. They were holy. They had the Scripture. They knew how to worship God, right? And they moved in, cleaned house, except for a few of you, okay? And what happened? Before you know it, they were acting like you, even though most of you were wiped out. 2 Chronicles 33, a few years later, the person in charge, one of the king's name was Vanessa, was 12 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, but did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, like unto the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. Even though you guys are gone, you were saved, and you really rubbed off on these guys. This was the Israelite leader. He caused his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. He also observed times and used enchantments and used witchcraft and dealt with a familiar spirit and with wizards. He wrought much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. So Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to err, and to do worse than the heathen whom the Lord had destroyed before the children of Israel. Not only did your holiness, your wonderful chosen people come in and inhabit this great land that God gave you, you have defiled it. Why? Because you let some of this junk stay, and not only did it get on you, you improved upon it and made it even worse. Good job, people of God. Good job, right? finally say stop? When is it that we finally just say, no, that's not right, right? There's a new home in Toledo that was opened up. What is it? The Daughter Project. It's for victims of sex trafficking. He finally said, stop, I've had enough. I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm not going to put my head in the sand. When do we, God's people, go, my goodness, you have done so much. You have brought me so far. I am not going to allow this to happen anymore, right? Finally, years later, between the time of Moses and the time of Josiah, Pastor Rob and I figured it out last night. It was 700 years, I believe, okay? 1395 was the year, roughly, I think, that they went in the Promised Land. And then at 695 was Vanessa, maybe somewhere around there, BC. Okay, so, a couple hundred years, they're doing all this junk. And Josiah, in 2 Kings 23, says, he defiled Topheth, which is the valley of the son of Canaan, that no man make his son or daughter pass through the fire to Moloch. In other words, he's like, stop. We're not doing this anymore. He destroyed, altars, and he got rid of all that junk. All right? Now, you think he was famous, popular? Hopefully someone said, finally, right? But it's like blind, stupid sheep. We just follow. We just accept it. Like, yeah, but Deanna, that was all in Bible times. That was those crazy people. They had 10 wives, too, so what's that tell you, right? But no, our children are still under attack. Most of you said you didn't survive childhood without attack. Trying to destroy you to keep you chained up the rest of your life, right? And we're called to live free. What if we actually give our children and the children of this generation freedom? Just to be free and pure and to live for one, right? So here's some things you may not know. We talked about China has a one-child policy. If you don't think evil is lurking on this earth, you've had your head under a rock. This was interesting. If someone actually has twins or triplets, it's like, what happens to the one-child rule? They're not officially penalized, but there are many accounts of women being told upon their children's birth, which one do you want to keep? You're like, oh, we would never let that happen in America. Multiples are often aborted before birth or killed immediately afterwards. There's up to 1 million orphans abandoned each year in China. Not because their parents died in a car accident, but because they didn't want to keep the child because it was a girl. Okay, so they're just left. All right, in 2007, there were 17 million children that were orphaned in China. 17 million. Yes, ma'am.
There's also more boy children than girls children. So they're having the government is posting these signs and ads on TV how they should value their daughters and trying
now they're running out of girls, so they're stealing daughters and kidnapping daughters now, so somebody has someone to marry to make babies.
Yeah.
It's all evil, isn't it? It's awful. Can you imagine your own daughter, your sister, disappearing and being kidnapped? It's because the government said, well, we need her over here. Okay. Now, according to the National Center for Missing Children here in America, there's about 250,000 children, 250,000 children in danger of being exploited some way. Child pornography, sex trafficking, that kind of thing. 250,000 kids. Again, can you imagine the horror of that for you or your child? 12 is the average age of entry into porn and prostitution. Okay, if 12 is the average age, what's that? What do you know about averages? Sometimes it's lower. 12, really? So is there an attack on children still today, or was it just in the Bible? It's still today. Is it like millions of children in the world, or is it just a few in Taiwan? It's millions. We know in Toledo there was girls taken in Toledo, right? Up 75, I encourage you guys to keep an eye on your kids in this mall, because we're right off 75. Someone could scoop them up and take them. It may not be a big mall, but, there's wackos out there everywhere. There's an attack on our children. All right, now remember this. The Lord warned Moses before they ever went into the Promised Land, don't do these stupid things. They still did the stupid things, right? Okay. And God's anger was so evident when they allowed their children to be subject to this kind of stuff. And it's still going on in the world. All right, last but not least. One other area that our children are being destroyed. Okay? Here's an excerpt I read from the statistics page. A young teenage girl impregnated during a satanic ritual is forcibly delivered of her near-term baby, forced to ritually kill the child, and then to cannibalize its heart, as cult members watch. And I'm sorry to be so gruesome. Another girl, a small child, is sealed inside the cavity of a disemboweled animal and rebirthed by her cultic captors during a ceremony. You're like, oh, come on, this stuff doesn't happen. Yes, it does. In this area, in this country, it happens every day. And I'm not going to share details, but Bob and I are personally involved in some cases. We know of some cases of both what's happened to babies and as well as the adults who survived some of these things. It's real. Okay, it's impacted our family directly. This stuff's real, and it's still going on. And what are we doing as the church? Are we saying no more? Or I'm just going to go like this, that's your business. No, God is angry. Just like he was angry at Moses' people saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? There is an occultic, ritualistic abuse that is just what horror movies are made out of. Have you seen some really good horror movies? And you're like, ugh. Okay, that stuff happens. It happens. No one wants to talk about it. But the spiritual world is dark and it's real. Would you say yes? This time of year, have you noticed it? Kind of heightened. You know, this is a very spiritual time. No matter what side of the fence you're on. You aware of that? Okay, some of you are far too aware of that. Okay? And I'm wearing my shield of faith right now, so you can throw daggers at me if you want. But I don't care. I would be amiss if I didn't give you the truth of the gospel, and you can do with it what you want. Because Bob and I will never tell you how to act or how to live or what to do. But we will just share what the Word says. So we talk about all these attacks on children. The practices of the occult are not secret. Look them up. They'll tell you exactly what they're doing and what day of the year they're doing it. Okay? I pulled some things off the October calendar. October 22nd to 29th is sacrifice preparation. It will include kidnapping, holding, and ceremonial preparation of a person for human sacrifice. Well, thank goodness that doesn't happen anymore, right? Oh, yes, it does. What is today? October what? 30th. Okay, so this just happened last week for this year, for those practicing. The 20th to the 30th is the Satanist highest unholy days related to Halloween, and there are human sacrifices. Now, All Hallows Eve or Halloween is one of the two most important nights of the year. Attempts are made to break the bond, which is keeping the doors to the underworld closed. So it's believed that on the 31st, the connection between life and death is never thinner. It's just like a membrane, like those in the dead world can communicate with the living, and it's real. It's like the door's open, okay, on Halloween, and then after that, it closes back up again. And so communication with the darkest and the deadliest and nastiest is so open. And so all this is done to heighten this awareness and the power. And so there are sacrifices. Now, you have Satanists and you have witches. Satanists will say, yes, I worship the devil. Witches will say, what devil? Right? But got news for you. That's who you're worshiping. Okay? You're one or the other. And so witches celebrate Halloween as the feast of, and I looked up this pronunciation last year, and I can't remember. I think it's Samhain. Okay, the first feast of the witchcraft year. Now, being a festival of the dead, Halloween is a time when witches attempt to communicate with the dead through various forms of divination. All right, now, here's the crazy comparisons. Christians have been saved by what? The blood of Christ, right? Christ poured his blood for you. What did he ask of you? Nothing. He gave it. You were the problem. He was the solution, right? He poured his blood for me. He poured his blood for you. He sacrificed. He became the sacrifice freely from love, motivated by love, which cracks me up. I'm not on this tonight. It just cracks me up. The ladies that are so in love with the Twilight character or vampires, because it's so in contrast to the free love of Christ when he He wants to suck your blood, can kill you at any moment. Okay, that's not what my God did. He sacrificed for me. Right? Edward would like to have you lay your life down for him. From what little bit I understand, I don't know. Anyway, so here you have a loving, saving sacrifice that pours his blood out. On the dark side of things, blood has similar power. Only guess whose blood gets to pour out? Not the high priest for you. The innocent sacrifice. Okay? The innocent sacrifice. The blood of children is especially desirable when they're worshiping their gods. Because if you can offer that up to your God, that gives you more brownie points. Our children are at risk. I don't know if any of mine are out here. I know these things all too well. Can you just take my word for it from a personal standpoint? I know this all too well. Okay? It's real. There's attack on our children. When are we going to say enough is enough? And you're like, well, I don't sacrifice my kids. But there's things that we do that preserve satanic practices. The same way not every one of you was destroyed when they came to the promised land. Oh, you're harmless. You can stay. Well, no, we cannot keep practices that preserve this evil. Would you agree? I have an example for you. How many of you would say the Holocaust was awful? Okay, the Holocaust is when millions of Jews were just killed and gassed, okay, during World War II. Okay. There was supposedly a practice by the disgusting guards. When the chamber or the bunk was chosen for the day of gassing, the children were told, go run and hide, and if you can hide long enough, you'll be spared for today. So these children had become very good at hiding. Then there was a signal call that one of the other prisoners would signal when it was clear. Would you be shocked to know that's where we get Ollie Ollie in free?
Ollie Ollie Oxen free?
Whatever it is. I've never said it. I don't know. Hide and seek. Now, how many of that, does that change the idea of, let's go play hide and seek? Would that change it for anybody?
Sure.
Okay, well, I just made that up. That's really not true. But here's my reason I had to make that up. The preservation of some of the things we do is real. I couldn't think of anything else that was this evil. And again, you take this what you're going to say, and this is the last time I'll say it. Our practice of Halloween and trick-or-treating. There's not one symbol and one act that is not completely rooted in witchcraft and the occult and Satanism. From the apples, to the bonfires, to the bats, to the witches, to the pumpkins carved. There's not one thing that isn't traced back to evil, disgusting witchcraft and pagan practices that destroy our children. Okay? Don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. And all I'm saying is, why do we preserve that? It's just a challenge out for you. Oh, but it's innocent. They just get candy. Go buy them some candy. Why are we perverting our children and subjecting them to something on the most satanic day of the year when there's sacrifices going on? Now, if you're angry, that's fine. Be angry. I hope you are, because maybe I'm hitting a nerve. Why do we do this? Oh, we've always done it. Oh, the kids shouldn't suffer. Buy them some candy. They'll live. They'll be okay. If they never practice it, they never know what they're missing. Okay? My kids have never done Halloween. They don't know. They don't do it. You know why? Because we don't do it. Are they deprived? I don't think so. So when the trick-or-treaters come around, guess what? We had family movie night. We drove to a movie. We went out for ice cream. We get out of Dodge, right? My daughter has a Halloween party at school tomorrow. She doesn't do Halloween. She doesn't dress up. She's got something planned for her in the gym. They already know she doesn't do Halloween. It's not that hard. It's not that bad. Oh, would she really be hurt by doing it? I'm not taking a chance. I'm not taking a chance because I have other children who weren't born to my family. And I saw the impact of witchcraft in their families. Simple little things like Halloween. It was bad. Okay? So just, you can take my word for it or not. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not. It's your thing. Bob and I happen to be really convicted on this one because we have personal experience. And I know that you don't all share that. And that's fine. I get that. But if I didn't share the story and what the scripture says, then it's like we're just allowing the children to be passed through the fire and no one's saying stop. Right? Is that fair right? That's really not true. That wasn't true at all, so get those poor little starving children out of your mind. It was awful. Yeah, it goes to the graveyard. All right. All right, now let's go on a positive note. With that all said, I just pray for the safety of your children and all of us this week. Because there's been some really evil, ugly stuff. But anybody say, I've never been more depressed than this month? I've never been so beaten down? There's a reason for that. You're being prayed against by the dark underworld. And we participate in it without even knowing it. And that's just Halloween. We haven't even got into the other stuff. But this isn't about, oh no, and the world is all evil. But let's just be aware, at least for the kids, right? All right, so moving on. What was last week's love project? Anybody remember?
Bless your enemy.
What was it?
You had to bless someone you judged.
Bless someone you judged. Did you do that?
Yes. Well, I said I would.
Wow, you came clean. Awesome. You don't have to tell me what you did. Did anybody else bless someone that they had been very judgmental of? Excellent. Now, who do you think it helps more, them or you? It really does. Did you get a new love for them, a new at least tolerance of them? Tolerance, yeah. Because remember, we said be careful who you judge. You're bound to repeat their sin even worse. So be careful.
I've been thinking about that a lot too.
Yeah. You see that?
About the whole, like when I start judging somebody, I start rethinking it now.
Awesome. Awesome. That's good. Good. Thanks for honesty. All right, so this week's love project it's a simple one, but I really hope you can do this a couple times. Tell someone why you are thankful for them. Because, you know, this is a busy world and we're all working very hard. We all get run down. Can you just tell someone why you're thankful for them? Maybe you should do it to your enemy and find something you're thankful for. And don't say, boy, I'm thankful we're not related. I'm thankful I don't have to sleep on Friday. No, not that kind of thankful. But could you share with someone why you're actually thankful? You know why? Because A, it gets your heart more thankful. And that is another way to fight depression. And so many of us deal with that. And so realize what you're thankful for. And then find someone you're thankful for and tell them. Because they may need to hear it, right? So I encourage you to do that. I'm sure you can come up with someone you're thankful for, what they do or who they are or anything, okay? All right. Well, you guys have been very kind, and I promise not to be so whatever next week. But we have some announcements, and Heather wants to talk to you for a second.
That was an excellent message.